Good evening and welcome to the Greg Tompsett Sports Show. You are joining us tonight on this fine Friday evening as we have this wonderful, amazing panel of guests talking through our NFL storylines for this 2023 NFL season. First, we have the delightful Ashley Marie coming to us, the content social media manager for the Undroppables. Ashley, how we doing?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. And of course, right below me here, Antwan. Now, you guys know him previously from the Panthers, from the Dolphins, now covering the Jets for the New York Daily News. How we doing, Antwan?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Welcome on tonight. And of course, from Bill's subreddit fame on Reddit and on Cover One, Uber Hansen. Hans, how we doing, sir?
I mean, another night with you couldn't get better than this, right?
Obviously, it's hard to ask for more, really. So I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I think this should be kind of fun. We'll go through, and there's a lot of things in different areas. I won't sneak anyone's draft board here as we get ready to go around. I think there's a lot of different things that we can talk about is what we're excited for this NFL season. There's a lot of movement, players in new jerseys. We have different divisions with a lot of tight competition. We've got some exciting rookies. We've got some people coming back from injury, some new coaches, and I'm really curious to see what piques your interest and where we kind of lean as things go. So tonight's format for everybody jumping in, we are going to go around in a kind of fantasy football draft style. We'll go around in order. We won't do a snake draft. We'll just keep going in order. I'll pick last. Home court will defer to our guests here this evening. We'll go through around each one. Each person will present their storyline that they're going to be drafting and which one, the reason that they take it for what they want to talk about. We'll all chime in or give them a hard time about why we don't like their choice, but we'll go through and talk about what's there and keep moving around as the evening goes. Everybody ready to go?
Yep.
All right. So the first pick tonight, Antwan's going to lead us off here. What is the number one storyline that you are looking for heading into this NFL season?
Well, I know why I'm number one because you already know what I'm going to say. So
I figured it'd be easiest just to let you pick first.
Of course, obviously it's Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, and they've been the media darling the all season. Everybody knows that. Everybody acknowledges that. And I think it's people are taking shots at that too. Obviously, we talked about Sean Payton and things of that nature too. But it's the biggest storyline of the offseason. Aaron Rodgers, a future Hall of Fame quarterback. He could retire right now and be a Hall of Fame quarterback. But the fact of the matter is he decided to continue his career with the Jets, and now all of a sudden everybody's thinking they have Super Bowl aspirations, and maybe they're going to win the AFCs and maybe they're going to win the AFC in general. I'm not saying this, but, I'm just thinking that this is kind of what some people have said ultimately. But I think that's the number one story of the offseason, to be honest with you, that, Aaron Rodgers, spending 18 years in Green Bay and then obviously transitioning over to, the Jets. And then obviously it's kind of like what Tom Brady did with New England, and obviously Peyton Manning in the Broncos later on in his career. So, yeah, like I say, when I was picked first, I actually knew that that's probably what we're going to go with. So I had to, fall in line with that.
Hard to disagree. Hey, Ashley, Hans, how about you guys? What are your thoughts on what I think was a pretty telegraphed first pick?
I'm glad you let him go first, because if you didn't, I was going to have to cede that pick to let him get it. And, so I'm happy you let him go first. I agree. I think the big factor is it's compounding. There's a million different reasons why it's interesting. I mean, going from he's finally having receivers, he has a team with skill position that's loaded, and you see a different side of Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers that's willing to take a pay cut to have a roster, right? That's not how we knew him in Green Bay. So seeing this, whether it be PR type Aaron Rodgers for now, that's trying to play up, and I'm intrigued to see him in the New York media. I'm intrigued to see him on the field. I think that's the general number one storyline of the offseason and going into the season.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'll say this. Aaron Rodgers is my GOAT. I think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I know Tom Brady's the greatest, let's say, football player of all time, but Aaron Rodgers, greatest quarterback of all time. I don't think he's currently the best quarterback in the NFL. I think that he is regressing a bit, but he's better than Zach Wilson. So the Jets are now a better franchise this season than they were last season. I think they're competing for the AFC East, and I say that obviously as a diehard Bills fan. They have a real chance to beat out the Bills for that. I have the Jets actually making the playoffs, but I think there's a darker side to this conversation, right? What happens if they don't make the playoffs? Like, what is the breaking point for the Jets here? Where is it Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh, their heads are on the chopping block at the end of the season? And I think that's something that could play in here. Like I said, I got the Jets making the playoffs, but there is a bad thing that could happen if Aaron Rodgers is kind of regressing like we saw him do last. He didn't play well last year. Are we seeing that Aaron Rodgers? Or are we seeing MVP Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I alluded that, not to, I don't know if you want to get in here, Greg, but I just figured I'd answer that right now. Like I alluded that in the article, like if they don't make the playoffs and then this is Robert Saleh's third year, I think it's going to be massive changes down the line. I think everybody's gone. I think you could have Aaron Rodgers retire. I think you could have Joe Douglas possibly losing his job, and then you could have Robert Saleh probably will lose his job too, because they're all in. Like they're going all in and trying to make the playoffs and rewrite what happened. Like we're talking about a team that was 7-4 heading into December last year and having the opportunity to make the playoffs, and then they lose 6 straight to end the year and finish 7-10. So yeah, I think they have to make the playoffs this year, or else like it's going to be wholesale change. It's kind of what you saw with, remember Brett Favre came to the Jets too. It's kind of a similar situation with Eric Mangini, and then they kind of, the bottom fell out completely, and then it was total wholesale changes too. And they brought in Rex Ryan, and of course they drafted Mark Sanchez, and that was kind of the catalyst for their mini run in 2009 and 2020.
Yeah, the two sides of the coin are super interesting. So Ashley touched on it. I was expecting PR spin on the pay cut to not be real, and then the details would come out and be like, oh, see, it wasn't really a pay cut. They just shuffled it around to help the team. And like, no, like it's a real pay cut. He just gave back $35 million. I don't. Well,
it's also really a 5-year contract, and then they shoveled the years like so. If he played like 3 or 4 years, he would get that money back.
Correct. It was
that's kind of what it is too.
And he's made some comments about that he expects this to be a years long commitment. So that's going to be interesting to monitor. And I don't know if there's a combination of GM and head coach around the league who are both as well liked and respected, who are also as close as these two are to losing their job. That I think almost everyone has looked at, well, I like all the names of the players that Joe Douglas keeps drafting, but some of them don't stay healthy. Some of them, end up not panning out, but were very popular, well-regarded, celebrated picks. And then obviously some have been fantastic picks, but it hasn't resulted in wins. Everybody seems to like Robert Saleh. The team seems to kind of rally around him. He seems to be very popular and for the most part doing a good job. But I think everyone's correct here that if they don't make the playoffs, I think, maybe a winning season and some weird tiebreaker thing is possible. But I think if they don't make the playoffs, those guys' jobs are absolutely in jeopardy.
Well, it's a result-based business, so you have to win. I mean, ultimately, no matter who you draft, if you're not winning, then it doesn't really matter. I mean, so that's basically where we're at. Like, last year, I think the Jets were ahead of schedule last year. I don't think people thought they would win. Well, I actually picked them to finish 7-10, and I had my editor call me and was like, "Are you nuts? They're going to win 7 games?" I was like, "Yeah, I think they're going to win 7 games." I didn't have it necessarily how it went down.
Maybe not 7-4 and then losing 6 in a row.
Exactly. But I thought they were an improved team. So, but we'll see what they. But they have to make the playoffs. Like especially when they're going all in. I mean, they're inviting people like to watch practice, like legitimately people every day. So you gotta make the playoffs. You really do.
All right, Ashley, I can't take any more Jets talk here for a little bit. So, Ashley, number 2 pick, where are you going? What is the next most interesting storyline to you?
To me, it's can Lamar Jackson live up to his price tag, and can he become the MVP Lamar Jackson he once was? He obviously had a new contract, 5 years to $60 million. The Ravens were 28th in pass attempts last season, and I think the addition of offensive coordinator Todd Monken and the addition of wide receivers like OBJ and Zay Jones kind of help him. I think Todd Monken's going to be a huge factor here. I like to look at, his previous stuff. There's a clip from the website that the Browns offense in 2019 that he helped run was Nick Chubb, the second most rushing yards, and Baker Mayfield for his season high. I just think it's going to be a more well-balanced offense if the offense can handle it. So I think my key there is looking at Lamar Jackson and can he make that progress? Can he live up to everything that happened in the offseason of being his own agent and getting paid that money to be in that top tier again? And will it pay off for the Ravens?
I won't lie. I'm going to have a fair amount of fantasy investment saying the answer to that is yes.
Yeah.
I think that Lamar Jackson is one of the most underpriced guys in fantasy right now, and that I think the health and the opportunity of, obviously there was some maybe unsustainable elements of his MVP season, some of the touchdown rates things, some of the bigger play things, but the overall ability that's there, and now adding in that Todd Monken offense that you referred to, I think is really intriguing. I think that's an exciting one.
Yeah, and it was really well balanced when he was at Georgia. He wasn't afraid of the run, which I think is really important in a Ravens offense. The Ravens are tied to the run for as long as they'll be here. They love the run game. So not having to essentially completely transition, but still being able to rely on the run while opening up the field to pass is going to be really crucial to this Ravens offense. And I agree. I think it pays off for them, especially in a division that's at a little bit of a low.
Yeah. Interesting. Hans, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I love Lamar Jackson. I think that people have gotten really down on him the past 2 years. Yeah. A lot of it has to do with his injuries, right? You're only playing 12 games, and at the end of the season, kind of costing I'm not saying costing your team. It's not his fault. He got hurt. He couldn't play. But because of his injury, it cost the team the ability to win the AFC North, host a game against the Bengals, et cetera, et cetera. You got to see Lamar stay healthy. I think that's the biggest thing. And if he stays healthy, he's going to be regarded as a borderline top 5 quarterback, if not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL, because he is that talented. It's not easy to win an MVP. It's even more difficult to win one unanimously. He's one of, I think, only 2 people have ever done that. I'm not sure if that's 100% correct. So Lamar Jackson this season has ridiculous upside. And in that offense, like Ashley was saying, like the new offensive coordinator is going to kind of open things up for him. I question Odell Beckham. I wonder what that's going to be, but he has weapons there. Like he has the team around him. Can he lead that team to actually win that division, win the North, and compete deep into the playoffs, not just one round? Go 2, go 3 rounds. I'm interested to see that. But yeah, I mean, I got the Ravens finishing second in the North, and I don't have the Bengals finishing first. So that's a whole nother thing.
Spicy. I'm picking the Ravens to win the AFC North. So we'll have to talk about later who I'm not sure. I'm not going to say anything because my draft pick might impact your answer. So don't answer that yet. Antwan had the same reaction I did. Antwan, any thoughts on Lamar Jackson and Ashley's draft choice here?
I think, I assume, not to kind of foreshadow a little bit, but I think Lamar Jackson is kind of in the same boat as Tua in a way that, people are questioning, can he stay healthy? I mean, you have 2 straight years where, your team is kind of held, captive as far as your injuries and things of that nature too. So, yeah, I think that everybody knows what he is. I think he's a tremendous quarterback, definitely top 10. Like you said, I think, Friends top 5 quarterback. It's just a matter of can he stay healthy. If he can, then I think the Ravens have an opportunity to win a division too. If not, then, we're talking about a team that's, borderline, may not even make the playoffs. But yeah, I think for me, I think the Ravens are going to finish second. I think the Bengals are, I'm not going to give too much away too.
Don't steal any draft picks.
I won't give too much away, but I really like the Ravens to make the playoffs this year, to be completely honest. So yeah, I mean, Lamar is all world, and I think he's going to have a similar year. I think he's on a trajectory to do that last year, similar to 2019 until he got hurt. So it's just a matter of can he stay healthy and can he continue to play a full 17-game season? That's the big question for me.
I like it. All right, for our next first round pick, Hans, where are you going?
I'm gonna go back to the AFC East for a second. I'm not going to do the Bills. I'm going to do Bill Belichick, another GOAT. Bill Belichick, greatest coach of all time. I'm hearing on the radio all the time, and I didn't actually even think about this until I heard it. This could be his last year. Like, they could move on from him after this season. So I'm interested to see if that story actually holds any merit. Like, is Bill Belichick truly on the hot seat? Because I can't even fathom firing Bill Belichick. Like, if Robert Kraft has like the ability to do that, that's something crazy to me. I don't think that the Patriots are going to completely flounder and be some 2-15 team. Like, they don't have the talent that the other teams do in the AFC East. But at the end of the day, when you have Bill Belichick, you can make wine out of water with him. Like, they were borderline playoff team last year. They almost made if they beat the Bills, they're in the playoffs last year. Yep. And they had nothing on that team. I think that they're actually better this year. Obviously, the AFC East also got better. Jets and Dolphins got better. And I do believe the Bills got better as well. But I could see the Patriots kind of sneaking up and pushing for that third spot in the AFC East. I just wonder if they miss the playoffs, is Bill Belichick truly on the hot seat? Like, is that a real thing?
I think that's a really interesting thought. And I know a lot of things come into play. He's obviously, I think that the talk is true that he's genuinely motivated to get the all-time record and to pass Don Shula for the most career wins. And I won't lie, it's at kind of a weird point of how many wins he need. I think it's 31 that he needs. And getting 31 more wins, this is not a 3 straight year 10-win double-digit win team right now. So you're talking about, are they going to get through 4 more seasons? And now that's 4 seasons of needing like 8+ wins each year, 8 wins each year. Is Robert Kraft going to give him 4 more seasons if you're not having a winning record every time? So, like, the idea that Bill Belichick either may not pass Don Shula for the all-time wins record or may not do it as a Patriots coach is really foreign. And I won't lie, some of the schadenfreude of me just being petty, there's actually a fairly likely scenario where he passes the record for the most career losses and doesn't pass the record for the most career wins. And I won't lie, I wouldn't hate threading that needle to see where that lands. Antwan, Ashley, any thoughts on Belichick?
Yeah, I know for a fact. Well, a lot of people in the Patriots they hate Don Shula. So they would
understandable.
He would love nothing more than to pass Don Shula, God rest his soul, but to pass that all-time wins record. It's just a matter of, like you said, it's how many years would he be willing to coach, and then would Robert Kraft be willing to deal with that? I think ultimately, I will say this too, and I've said this to multiple people: whoever wins the AFC East, I think the Patriots are going to have a lot to say with that, because I think they're a mediocre team. I don't think they're bad, but I think they can win 7 or 8 games.
Like, I think the defense is still real. Ramondre Stevenson is real. Like, they'll gut out some ugly games.
They're gonna split against a lot of like whoever's ever to sweep them, whether it be Buffalo, whether it be Miami, whether it be the Jets, which I don't. I'm not counting the Jets because the Jets hadn't beaten them in 8 years. But whether it be any of those teams, I think they win the division, because I think the Patriots they're gonna
play spoiler.
Yeah, they really are. And then the Patriots and the Jets play each other the last game of the season in Foxborough. So keep an eye on that as well. I think, I truly think that the Patriots are going to win probably by 8 games. They're going to finish like 8-9, probably. I think the X factor with them is Bill O'Brien. Getting Bill O'Brien there, whatever you want to say about his time in Houston, he is the best coach they've ever had. Like,
he's not a defensive coordinator calling the offense. Are we saying that's a good thing?
Like I don't
bold move.
The whole thing with that last year at all. But Bill O'Brien's we'll see what he does with Matt Jones there. I think Matt Jones is about average. Maybe he can be an above average quarterback. Maybe he can do what Brian Daboll did with Daniel Jones last year too. If he can do that, then Patriots have an outside chance to maybe win, 10 games and sneak into the playoffs. Look, we all know we all have our picks of who's going to make the playoffs. Why can't the Patriots, sneak in there? They certainly could. We all know it. everybody we pick is not going to make the playoffs. We all know that.
There's surprises every year.
Surprises every single year. New England could definitely do that. They have a great offensive line, a great defense. Judon is all world. They're obviously well coached, so it wouldn't completely shock me if they were to surprise people and finish second or third in this division. Because I think the AFC is going to have 3 teams to make the playoffs.
I do think that's feasible. Yeah, and I think that as a GM kind of soured people's minds down in Houston, and now coming up to call plays again. Like, he's still a good offensive play caller and a good coach, even if maybe he did get a little out over his skis as a GM. I'm curious to see what he does with Mac Jones. All right. For my first pick here, I debated on a couple, and you guys did dabble into my draft board a little bit. I'm really curious if the horrendous final 6 games last year for Deshaun Watson is just what he is now, or are we going to see, like, beforehand and off field and other incidents aside, there are lots of people rooting for those final 6 games to be what Deshaun Watson is now. There's plenty of people who wouldn't mind that being the new reality. I can't bring myself to believe that just being away from the game for, it was almost 18 months, 2 years that he was away from football playing, that guy that we saw who was he was a top 5 quarterback in the league at that final point in the playoffs going in. And now all of a sudden he's just not good anymore. That Cleveland team on paper looks very interesting and has a lot of talent. And last year the defense looked good and played horrible. And we've seen how things have kind of struggled and fallen apart. They were better with Jacoby Brissett last year than they were with Deshaun Watson. Everybody, they've been vilified for the guaranteed contract, and giving someone with that many off-field, allegations, that much money, and giving up that many draft picks for it. I'm really curious to see, can they put that aside? Can he put that aside and get back to being a franchise quarterback? Because, man, talk about, putting on the black hat and being the bad guy. If the Browns go on a run and start to play amazing, I think you're going to see like Barry Bonds level stuff of opposing fan bases when he gets into those stadiums. If he starts playing to that franchise level again and lighting it up, I think you're going to see some passionate fans going at him in some of those stadiums.
You had me at the
he's
Barry
good
Bonds.
enough to do it.
I had to hear the Barry Bonds level fan. I was like Barry Bonds. Like, then you said the fans. I was like, oh, okay.
No, that's what I mean. Like, people.
I thought you were talking about like the player Barry. I was like,
no. I mean, people. I don't know what the equivalent of dressing up as a syringe would be for the Deshaun Watson scenario. I'm not gonna guess at what that costume would be. But I have a feeling there'll be some creative fans when he goes on the road this year. So, Ashley, we'll start with you in any thoughts on what this Cleveland team could be on paper versus reality.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me, based off of what you said, is how Cleveland handles it. He didn't play a full season, and obviously the team has had time with drafting him, but like since trading for him. But how does the team handle actually having him on the team for a full season? And does the team make a turn if he's not playing well? How does that team on paper, the talent on paper, respond to that, knowing that they're now kind of tied to this and being in this organization? Yep. And how does the organization respond to making such a divisive decision and then not paying off? Because then you almost taint your franchise because of that. And I think that's a bigger storyline for me, is to look at kind of how the locker room dynamic is for an entire season, and if that progression is not made, how that locker room is or deteriorates throughout the season.
Hans, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, to talk about talent again, like this is a much different situation than Lamar Jackson, but you're talking about a player who just a few years ago we were talking about as a top 5 quarterback, or some people even argued the best quarterback, or right there with Mahomes at points. Like, he was dragging a Houston Texans team to what, 3-13 record or something, but literally doing everything for them. And then obviously all the off the field stuff. But last season, he wasn't just not good. He was awful. Like, he was really bad.
It was really bad.
And I don't understand, like, you're away from football. That's really difficult probably to come back from. But it's weird to see him be that bad. But the talent is still there. It's not like his talent just disappeared. Like we're talking about like Space Jam back in the day when they took the talent away from the Looney Tunes or whatever. I just can't fathom that he is going to be as bad this season as he was last year. That being said, I think that you kind of were pausing me on the previous subject when I said I don't have the Bengals finishing first. I don't have the Ravens finishing first. Well, I also don't have the Browns finishing first. So
you have
that's
the Steelers in first place in the North. You're crazy. You're crazy.
My biggest hot take of the year. And just to kind of throw something out there, last year, Greg knows I had 2 teams finishing first that were hot takes. I had the Saints. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I had the Jaguars. The Steelers are my AFC team this year. I'm telling you, watch out for the Steelers. I think they're going to be special this season.
Ooh, all right. We'll let that one go here for a second. I think they actually made more. So one, their draft, they kept pissing me off the entire draft because they kept taking the people that were falling that I wanted the Bills to take. I'm like, why do they keep just falling to them? I don't understand. And then in free agency, they had a lot of sneaky value signings. So they added a ton of depth in free agency. So I think obviously you need those superstars on defense to stay healthy. I don't think you can't miss games from TJ Watt and Micah Fitzpatrick and some of the guys that they missed time from. But I do think it's interesting, and they put an awful lot of weapons around, Kenny Pickett, and now being in that position, I'm not a Kenny Pickett believer, but they certainly have surrounded him with enough weapons to find out. So that's interesting. All right, Antwan, we're back to you in round 2. What is your next most exciting storyline?
I think it's Tua, and I kind of alluded to that early on. Like I think the Dolphins, at least offensively, have offensive line aside. I think the offensive line is still a big question, but you got Tyreek Hill, arguably the best receiver in football, or at least one of 3. Jalen Waddle, who I think is one of the best too as well. I love what they have, just going on. Mike McDaniel, who I think is a mastermind in a different way. Like whether you talk about San Francisco, even what he was able to do with the Dolphins, considering the situation that Tua being out for multiple games. I'm curious to see if Tua can stay healthy, and that's always been a big question, even dating back to when he was in Alabama. I think they have a legit shot to not only win the AFC East, but to be that third or fourth team. Like you talk about the AFC, you look at the Chiefs, they're clear number 1, at least right now, at least going in. I think a lot of people would say the Bengals would be number 2, considering, just the last few years. And then number 3, whoever you want to throw in there, you could throw the Bills in there. You could throw, Jackson. If you want to throw Jacksonville in there, I don't think a lot of people are sleeping on Jacksonville simply because, just because I don't think a lot of people respect their division and things of that nature. But I think the Dolphins too hadn't gotten a lot of respect too, simply because Tua and things of that nature too. But I like Vic Fangio. I think he's gonna turn that around on their defense. They may have the worst defense in the division, but I think they're going to improve just on that unit as well, especially with the players that they have. Losing Ramsey was a big blow too as well. But if they can get, Xavier Howard can get back to the form that he once was, last year was a little bit injured, then I think the Dolphins could also, possibly win the AFC East, and, we'll see where it goes from there. But it all starts with Tua. I think if he can stay healthy, then he gives them a legitimate shot to be a team that could contend for a Super Bowl.
It annoys me how dangerous they were with Tua healthy, and I think that anytime you have Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill on a football field on the same team, it's terrifying for the other defense. Like they bring a level of explosiveness that no one can match, and obviously Tua had that stretch where he was able to harness that. Ashley, what are your thoughts on the Dolphins for this year?
Yeah, for me, I look at it from a little bit of a different point of view. Most of my undergraduate, senior research was on chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, and head injuries in NFL players. So I wanted to pull up a number. So for me, it's staying healthy, but in the fact that there are studies that show after injuries, you have a severe increased risk for depression and anxiety, which then put you at around, I think the number was a 28% chance of getting injured the following year if you experience those symptoms. So being able to look at it almost more from less football and more scientific for me this season, and being able to see his progress in health and being able to see how they manage him if there is a big hit that they may not consider concussive in another setting, but it's Tua and what he's gone through. That's the lens I'm kind of looking at it. So monitoring Tua's health is very high up there on like my storylines to follow for the season.
And not only that, not to interrupt you, Rick, like that, concussions aside, like even beyond that, like he had injury concerns, like even before that too. So it's not like, you know, we're not even talking about concussions, like even dating back to Alabama with the hip injury and the ankle and all of that. So like it's a legitimate concern about his health, like moving forward.
Hans?
Yeah, I mean the health, it's a massive concern. I mean, I flash back to that Bengals game still when he got hit and was on the ground, and watching his hands especially was just like devastating to watch. And like, to be honest, I thought that was the worst thing I was going to see all football season. Lo and behold, I saw something else much worse later in the season. But when it comes to Tua, like going to the football side of it, I know on Twitter, a lot of Dolphins fans take umbrage with me. They think I hate Tua and think he's awful. I think Tua is a very good quarterback, but I do think he's limited. He's really good at quick passes. Get the ball out, get it into his playmakers' hands, and let them go. And what better playmakers to have than Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle? I mean, just ridiculous weapons. But at the same time, I went back and kind of just looked through his kind of stat sheet and watched a little bit of some of the games. And like, he had 4 really, really good games, 4 really, really good games, 3 in a row. And then you talk about the one against the Ravens. Other than that, the other, what he played in 14 games. So the other about 10 games he had were average to below average. I'm not saying that Tua is a below average quarterback. I think he's really good, but I want to see consistency and I want to see health from him this season. If you don't get both of those, the Dolphins aren't competing for the division. So that's where I'm at right now with the Dolphins.
All right, Ashley, with our next choice in the second round, what are you leading off with your next storyline?
Yeah, I'm torn between 2, but I'll go with let's say the progress and development of Anthony Richardson and kind of his timeline with the Colts. I think that the Colts haven't feared making a spectacle of their team in their in this offseason. But I'm really intrigued to see how his development, especially in short yardage passes, was, as he struggled in that 5 to 10 yard range. You could see it in his heat map that he really struggled in that area. Seeing if they can develop him there, and being able to have, you know, decent talent on a roster. I'm not saying it's the best wide receivers and tight ends, but having a decent amount of depth there, and seeing what their timeline is with him, with Gardner Minshew there, who's not a horrible person to fall back on in the first few weeks of a season. Are they going to push themselves to put him out in the first few weeks, or are they going to kind of take a step back and say it's better for his development, better for us long term if he plays week 5, week 6 instead of week 1 or 2?
Really interesting. I think, you know, obviously, I think I'm statistically the most athletic quarterback in NFL history, you know, shattered pretty much every, you know, metric coming in of someone that size. Obviously, we've seen Michael Vick, we've seen Lamar Jackson from a speed standpoint, but he's 4 inches taller and 30 to 40 pounds heavier than those two and still ran almost as fast as them. I think that's really, really interesting. And I was maybe a little more intrigued on the upside pre Jim Irsay's most recent comments. When I thought he was going to be able to lean on Jonathan Taylor and stack boxes and play action rolling out of that. I think maybe done themselves a little bit of a disservice in the last little bit here. But I think seeing anytime you have a chance to watch the best athlete in history at a position come into the league, that's an exciting prospect. So
and being paired with Shane Steichen, who helped develop Jalen Hurts, and it's a similar style. Like, I'm not saying they don't have the same numbers, but it's a similar style of play, and seeing how Shane Steichen developed Jalen Hurts is gonna, you know, be a factor in his timeline.
Antwan, what are your thoughts on what we'll see here from this year from Mr. Richardson?
I'm a Florida Gator alum, so I watched a lot of Richardson in college. So I think, you know, I think he has an unlimited ceiling. He reminds me a lot of Josh Allen in a way that they were very raw coming out, and then they had mechanics that they needed to work on. I think what happened with Josh, what really helped him is having Brian Daboll being there and being his coach and, you know, be able to guide him and things of that nature too. Stipend having him, you know, with Richardson, I think that could also propel him to be, you know, eventually maybe one of the best quarterbacks, you know, in the game, to be completely honest with you. I think what hurt him in Florida is, one, they didn't have a lot around them at the receiving position. They just had a really good running game and the offensive line. And two, yeah, the coaching wasn't necessarily great too. But I think having, you know, being in the situation that he is, Jonathan Taylor aside, I would obviously it's a mess there and Irsay, and I won't get into that necessarily because I can say a lot. But I do like Rich. I think his ceiling is unlimited. I think he can be as good as he wants to be. It's just a matter of being working hard, and then basically working on the accuracy too. But yeah, I think it's a really intriguing story going into the season. But yeah, I think he's a tremendous talent, and I think he can be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the league, if he works on a few things.
Excited. How about you, Hans?
Yeah, I mean, I was excited about the Colts until I realized that Jim Irsay cared more about transferring a whale across country than paying his own players. That being said, when you go to Anthony Richardson, like Antwan was saying, like the potential seems unlimited. From everything I've seen, just a crazy amount of athleticism and all this raw talent in the world. But can he make that raw talent be a real thing in the NFL? With Josh Allen, talking about him, like coming into the league, people were sure that wasn't going to happen. There was no way Josh Allen could work out. He'd have to disprove math to work out in the NFL, and he did. But that's rare. That doesn't happen every single year, every 5 years, every 10, every 20 years. Can Anthony Richardson be Josh Allen? It's a possibility. I just question whether or not we're going to see, team strike gold 2 times in 5 years. Like it'd be wild if it happened. And if it does, to Antwan's point, he might be the next great thing. Maybe he surpasses Patrick Mahomes at some point. But I got to see it first. But it'll be exciting to watch him because just watching him run around and throw the ball, like it's just fun to watch.
For the record, like I just want to say this, like I've said this many times, I had Dolphin fans pissed off at me because I thought Josh Allen would be a really good quarterback, and then he ended up turning into I won't say he's exceeded my expectations, but when I saw him in 2018 as a rookie, I was like, this guy's gonna be really good. And Dolphins fans, he's trash. He's gonna be like, I'm like, watch, check. Like he's a rookie. He's gonna continue to get better. And then of course, he continued to get better. But a lot of Dolphin fans, like I got ripped like into a new one by Dolphin fans when I was covering the team because like that's the last time the Dolphins had beaten the Bills until last year. So
no, it's certainly going to be interesting to see where that goes and if he can. I think that there are a lot of things that I think as time goes by, we see evolution and willingness to adjust. And I think, Ashley's point on Shane Steichen and what he did, I was not a Jalen Hurts believer coming out of Alabama. I did not think he was going to develop into a playable NFL starting quarterback, and he certainly has. And I think the ability to adapt the modern NFL offense to the skill set of your quarterback versus for a long, long time, it was shoehorning it the other direction, and you had to be able to run that West Coast timing-based offense. And if you couldn't do 1, 2, 3 and out exactly on the money, you didn't cut it in the NFL. And now finding that, hey, we have some of these ridiculous athletes that can do some things, and they can also still be good at other things that, no, maybe we're not going to run the Chad Pennington offense here, and maybe they couldn't execute that, but they're able to execute this. And that, hey, Jalen Hurts is really good at accurately throwing deep balls. Why don't we go get him 2 really good receivers? And if those guys aren't open, he can take off because the defense is 25 yards down the field. And now bringing the guy over who designed that with Anthony Richardson. And I don't know if Alec Pierce and Michael Pittman and Jelani Woods are going to be enough to do that, to threaten defenses. But I'm intrigued by Josh Downs. Again, if I still believe they're going to figure something out with Jonathan Taylor, but I think having that threat there, it's going to be interesting. That is a ridiculous amount of athleticism in a backfield. And if they get that figured out, I think the kid's got a shot, and it's going to be fun to see. All right, Hans, you're up in round 2. What is your choice?
Yeah, I'm going to go off the beaten path a little bit here. So the Jaguars are playing back-to-back games in London.
Yeah.
There's a reason behind that. It's not just a random, the schedule fell this way. Oh, the Jaguars are there for 2 weeks in a row. The NFL has their eyes on something, and I believe they have their eyes on Europe as a destination for football. We've seen more and more teams play there every single season. I do think at some
5
point,
regular season games this year.
yeah, I think at some point we'll see every team play at least one game in Europe. I just wonder, are the Jaguars getting set up to make a move? I think they could stay in Jacksonville, but there's some sort of interest with that team in particular being the team in Europe. I don't think, though, the NFL would settle for moving one team to Europe. I think their eyes are on a division in Europe, but I don't think that's next year, 2 years, 5 years from now, but I could see a decade from now. So let's fast forward to 2033. There might be a entire division that's dedicated to Europe, Spain, Germany, England, and I don't know, France or something along those lines. I think that this is the start of that journey. It's figuring out what happens when you have 2 weeks here, when you have teams traveling. How does this all work out? I'm really interested to see those 2 weeks. And obviously, as a Bills fan, we just so happen to be the team that plays them the second time, the first time a team's ever been back-to-back in Europe.
Interesting. Ashley, what are your thoughts on could we see prior to the investment in the stadium? I believe there's now been some money put down on the new stadium.
Yeah,
in Jacksonville.
They're renovating the stadium actually.
Yeah. Prior to that, I actually thought it was a foregone conclusion we would see the London Jaguars.
Yes.
Ashley, what are your thoughts on maybe Uber seeing a division in Europe?
I don't hate it. I think they're really exploring the idea of, can they have sustained success rather than it being a novelty, right? Because you come for 3 games, it's a novelty. Are these fans willing to come for a season or, for half a season? Are they willing to have a designated team? Is it going to have to be like a carousel almost that everyone's going to have to spend some time in Europe? I think they are starting to explore that a little bit more, and they're not being as quiet about it as they used to. But I do agree they have their eyes very specifically on the Jaguars there. They really do love that.
Yeah, and Shad Khan kind of put his stake in the ground there and wanting that to be the case. And now I don't know if he's pivoted to some extent with investing money in renovations in the stadium there. And not that he couldn't have held off for a bit longer, but I think that has to at least throw a wrench in what I think he had in mind at one point. But the idea, you could go through a travel plan where having a 4-division team there, I think sustainably. Germany is very fertile soil there. The fans in Germany are just rabid for football. I think we've done enough investment that you could maybe do 2 in London, 2 in Germany, something like that, and build a division there where you're playing their division games there. Then maybe you come across for longer stretches. You couldn't do the normal home and away, but you could have maybe 4-game road trips, then back for 4 home games, then 4-game road trips where you could stay. I do think one thing will be interesting. Can you recruit NFL players to sign with a team that's a home team in Germany or in Hamburg or Frankfurt or Berlin and London? And can you get an NFL player to want to choose to go there? We're talking that's long down the line, but I'm curious if that would ever be able to become a reality.
And
I'll say this.
Yeah.
Real quick. Like not to give away my age, but as a kid, like I remember NFL Europe. So
yeah,
I mean that was that was a thing once upon a time. So I mean I actually thought it was pretty cool until like NFL kind of shelled it. But I think at some point, I think they would like to maybe have a team. I agree with you. Had Jacksonville not decided to do the renovations, but now they're talking about Jacksonville possibly playing at what a University of Florida plays or Florida State or somewhere like that. So it seems like they're invested in also having a footprint in Europe, but also in Florida too.
It's funny what getting a franchise quarterback will do to your investment plan.
Oh yeah, just a bit. Yeah, and winning
You'll
the playoffs,
actually believe in your organization. No way.
You don't need the novelty of being like the foreign team. You can actually just invest in your own franchise. It's such a crazy thought. All right. Any other thoughts here on the choice there for London? All right. So I've gone around a couple different spots. I am curious to see I'll make a homer choice here on with this Bills season coming in obviously last year was such a foreign feeling, being, a weird amount of people picking them to win the Super Bowl, being the Vegas favorite to win the Super Bowl. Then, the amount of things, the hate crime shooting at the grocery store in town, and then Dawson Knox's brother dying going into the season, and then a historic storm that has to move the game, where they have to, can't play at home and have to move to play a home game in Detroit against Cleveland. And then obviously with the Damar Hamlin situation and having to experience all of that, and after seasons of really good injury luck, having all that, and it just kind of became so much for them to bear, and obviously just crumbling at the wrong time. I'm curious, was that kind of the straw that broke the camel's back? And did that, now they've kind of gone back to the middle of the pack, versus a piece of me looks at it and says, I kind of think this roster is a little bit better than the one that was the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Adding in, still not losing all the guys that they had for, having Tre'Davious White back, plus adding Leonard Floyd and Poona Ford, and a lot of little pieces here or there that they rounded out, where instead of Jake Kumro, it's now Trent Sherfield, and adding in, instead of the leftover remains of Roger Saffold, they have Connor McGovern, and just a lot of little things around the edges. Instead of having Jaquan Johnson as the backup safety, now Taylor Rapp is the backup safety, and just a lot of little pieces around the edges. I'm curious, are they better suited to play the underdog role, where the darlings of every talk show are all the Flash in Miami and Aaron Rodgers in New York? And I just wonder, are they in a little bit better shape to be under the radar and be the underdog, where I kind of still think they're pretty good? And when you have a team with Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, I love the fact that there are people talking about they might not even make the playoffs. I think it's crazy. I don't think most serious people are picking that, but having people legitimately go on television shows saying that they're picking the Bills not to make the playoffs, it warms the cockles of my heart to give Sean McDermott that ammunition to go on there. It was on First Take, Antwan.
Of course. What I think about the Bills, I still think they're a playoff team. Whether they win a division or not, then that's another question. But
the division is certainly closer than it's been maybe in 20 years.
I think I know they're a playoff team. I think, like I said, I think division is, everybody's gotten better. Even the Patriots, to an extent, have gotten better. But yeah,
I think they're in last place, and I think they're the best last place team in the NFL.
I think the Patriots are a 7 or 8 win team in that division. But I think the Bills are still a playoff team. I mean, I think it's ludicrous to think that they're not. I mean, especially when you have a guy that is a MVP candidate every single year, and then you have one of the top 5 best receivers in football in Stephon Diggs. So, yeah, I think – and then the defense is going to be sound too under McDermott. Yeah, it's still some questions there. Leslie Frazier, it's kind of a weird predicament, the way that he left. I'm kind of curious about – I need to understand a little bit more about that. But I've seen Sean McDermott be a play caller in Carolina. I think he'll be fine. I think it's just might have like trying to, maneuver 2 different things, trying to be a CEO, but also be a play caller as a defensive coordinator. Like, I'm curious to see how he'll navigate that.
Very interesting. Ashley, it's your turn to say nice things about the Bills.
Listen, I really do like the Bills. I'm a Giants fan. I don't have any disdain towards the Bills. I forget how much they really went through until you put it in a timeline like that, right? Like, it's so easy to just remember what happened to Damar Hamlin and not the storm and everything else that went with it. I do think for me, they win the division. That's my pick for it. I can't believe people are saying they won't make playoffs at all. But I do see a little bit of the hesitation in some very small moments where Josh Allen just couldn't make that one last step in some key moments last season. So for me, that's what I'm looking out for. I do think that they are fairly well suited to play that role, where like we have, we're in a division where people are still doubting us, even though we're a really good team, that they can use it as ammunition, but not too overboard, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like it.
By the way,
Hans,
you didn't bring up the Jets like actually injuring Josh Allen, his elbow.
I was just gonna say,
Mhm.
I actually thought about it when Ashley
Yeah.
mentioned timeline. I was like, oh yeah, our quarterback
Yes.
sprained his UCL, which
against
ruined the 49ers' entire season, and
Yeah,
our guy
yeah.
didn't miss a single game.
Yeah,
Like he
Bryce
sprained
Huff
his
ended up-
UCL.
Yeah,
It's like Tommy John surgery. He's like, no, I'm good. He missed 0 games. It's
Bryce
he's
Huff
an
ended up
alien.
injuring his elbow in that game that went against
Yeah.
Buffalo, and then
Yeah.
that could have changed the whole trajectory of the whole season for them.
Mm-hmm.
Insane. All right, Hans. Any other thoughts on what this underdog Bills season could look like?
Yeah, I mean, just to quickly go back to last season, like you talked about the things that happen off the field, and the crazy thing is there's way more things than we've even brought up here that happened to the Bills. We even talked about Kim Pagula, like almost losing her life, and that weighs on the Bills. But I think the issue with the Bills last season was just miscalculations. They miscalculated a lot of things. They miscalculated that Roger Saffold could be a starting guard in the NFL at this point. They miscalculated that Isaiah McKenzie could fill in for Cole Beasley. They kind of didn't figure out that CB2 spot. They were kind of mixing and matching Kyrie Elam, Christian Benford, Dane Jackson. And then the Von Miller injury. All these things happened, and a lot of it was miscalculations. So what the Bills do this season, they said, okay, let's just recalculate. We'll start over. Let's get Poona Ford. Let's get Leonard Floyd. Let's get Dalton Kincaid. Let's take all those things we kind of messed up last year, and let's just try again and see if we can hit it on at least one of those lotto tickets. I think the Bills are a better roster this season. The biggest loss is Tremaine Edmonds, obviously. But the underdog mentality, the Bills always play great when they're the underdog. They just haven't been for a little bit. And now for people to be saying, well, this team's not going to make the playoffs, or this team's going to struggle to, contend with the Jets and the Dolphins, things like along those lines, the Bills are going to look at that and just say, okay, well, we'll see when Josh Allen steps on the field with Stephon Diggs. It's going to be harder this year than it's been since Josh Allen ascended, but I still think the Bills are the cream of the crop in the AFC East, and they're going to have a say come the end of the season in who wins the AFC in totality.
By the way, they're still the favorite to win the division.
Yeah.
Vegas.
Yeah. They're still the number 2 team in Super Bowl odds.
That's what I'm saying. I get it. Like, they're gonna use whatever motivation they can have, and I get it. Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
The one graphic where there were 4 people on the show and they were picking the division winners, and no one picked the Bills. Everyone picked either the Dolphins or the Jets. Like, Sean McDermott's going to make that a poster and put it in the locker room.
Like Louis Riddick and somebody else picked the Dolphins, and then
2 had the Dolphins, 2 had the Jets.
Of course,
Greenberg had the Jets. Yeah.
Somebody else picked the Jets, and I'm like, nobody picked the Bills. I'm like, okay.
All right, we'll do a quick rapid fire here. Any other ones you just want to shout out quick that you think are going to be interesting ones to keep track of? I'll throw out one. I'm curious, do the 49ers even have a quarterback? Like, it's so weird that like one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, and like there's a non-zero chance that Sam Darnold is leading them into the season. It's super weird. Ashley, any other ones that were still left on your draft board?
Yeah, a couple. I'm just going to throw them all into one NFC East one and say the Commanders as a whole, under new leadership, Sam Howell's development, and specifically interested in Eric Bieniemy as assistant coach, offensive coordinator, to see if it's him or situations and in getting a head coaching job. Mike McCarthy and
I say Bieniemy may be staking his claim that he could be the only one to survive there. Maybe he does a decent job and then can take over.
Exactly. Mike McCarthy, and if they stink, is it finally time to say you are at fault here and it's not everybody else that we fired along the way? And the Giants' development of Daniel Jones and every slot receiver in the NFL being on the Giants roster, really intrigued in that, and the whole Saquon Barkley situation to see how well he plays after everything that happened in the offseason.
Is 9 slot receivers too many? Who's to say?
I don't know. Who knows? Maybe we just throw them all out there. Really confuse everyone.
All the time.
All slot receivers. Yeah.
Hans, what else did you have floating out there?
We went this whole show of NFL storylines without talking about running backs, which should say something, right? The running backs have gone the way of I don't know, these ancient dinosaurs. Like, nobody even talks about them on shows about storylines about the NFL. What are the running backs going to do this season? Like, is there going to be a guy where people say, okay, wait a minute, we still need running backs in the NFL? Or are we going to the spot where it's like the Isaiah Pacheco's of the world are the future, where you pay a running back less than $1 million to lead a Super Bowl team? running backs is literally like, I think that's quietly the biggest story that no one really cares about because it just doesn't matter in the modern NFL.
Interesting. Antwan, what things did you have left floating that are intriguing you?
I have a few. I mean, I think I'm curious to see what the Cardinals will end up looking like too, because I mean, Kyler Murray. I mean, he might not even play this year. I mean, he suffered the ACL tear late in the season, and do you even bring him back like late November, early December when this team has double-digit losses? So I'm curious to see about that.
I have a sizable investment saying they won't.
No, I don't think so.
What they look like again, the number one overall draft pick.
But here's the thing, though. Like, here's the kicker with that. Yeah, if you get the number one, like, you're probably drafting Caleb Williams.
If you get Caleb Williams, where is Kyler Murray?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're invested in Kyler Murray. So it's a double-edged sword in that whole perspective. So, yeah, I'm curious to see about that. Also, the Raiders, like, Jimmy Garoppolo and that whole – like, that was weird because – when he came in and did his, introductory press conference, like it was supposed to be earlier than it was, and they took him off because, his, because of this physical and all of that things of that nature too. So I'm curious to see what the Raiders might be, and Josh McDaniels too. So that's an interesting, dynamic for me. And then the Broncos with Sean Payton and all the comments that he made, and you're talking a lot of trash, about Nathaniel Hackett, which I'm not saying is not what he said was. I think everybody would agree with what happened last year in Denver. However, you just don't say that out loud, especially in the coaching fraternity. Like it's codes to the streets, kind of what Nathaniel Hackett has said. Then you just don't say that, in a public place, especially to a publication like that. He was very frank about that, and I think it was just wrong of him saying, like, if you're at a bar, like, if we're just out like that, then yeah, I would, I might agree with a lot of what he had to say, but yeah, you don't say that on the record.
I brought up, imagine the things Sean McDermott could have said when he came in for that iteration of Rex Ryan after he took over. Like the things he legitimately could have said about work ethic and building team chemistry and all those different things.
Robert Saleh with Adam Gase too. Like, you just on the record. Like, it
doesn't mean you're wrong. You can't say that. Like it was crazy that he let him.
I also think it's interesting though, because it's like is this kind of a little, I'm not saying to the extent he went to, but maybe a little bit more normal to kind of talk about the failures of other coaches instead of like allowing the good old boys club to keep going on, right? I saw takes about that, like, hey, like maybe we just call out the BS as we see it, like not as harshly, but that kind of prevents the good old boys club from being the only way you can get a head coaching job.
And then we need to talk about we need to talk about Russell Wilson and like how like he might be. We talk about people on the decline, like he might be.
We're gonna find out.
He might be. He was like on a steep decline last year, so we're gonna find out. He lost a little bit of weight, and people think he might be back to what he was. But Seattle traded him for a reason. You don't trade, Hall of Fame talent like that unless you
have
an idea about what they are at this stage of their career. I'll just say that.
Yeah, we're gonna find out. All right, so thank you guys very, very much. Ashley, before we let you go here, let us know what's coming on the Undroppables and on the various places people could find your work.
Yeah, you could find me on Twitter. Won't stop calling it that. At Ashley_Marie with 2 A's in Ashley. I'm the co-host of the Undroppables Playbook and NFL podcast, where we talk about literally everything going on in the NFL. That's live Wednesday nights on the Undroppables YouTube or anywhere you listen to your podcast the next day.
Awesome. Antwan, how about you?
You find me Antwan Staley across the board, like all social media platforms, Twitter or whatever the hell Twitter is called nowadays. Well, it's whatever, like Threads, Instagram, whatever. So yeah, you can just covering the Jets, and then they'll have a joint practice against the Panthers, and just covering that in Tampa Bay, and then they close out with the Giants, and then it'll be September 11th against Buffalo in MetLife Stadium.
Cannot wait.
Yeah, Greg, you gonna be there for that?
I will be taking it in for my home here, but I can't wait to watch it. It's going to be very exciting. All right. Thank you both very much. Hans, I'm going to make you hang out and do this underdog read with me here so we can pay some bills. But Antwan, Ashley, thank you both very, very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night. All right. So A couple things we still need to go through here before we pay some bills with our new Underdog sponsorship. You can at least make fun of me as I try to answer the trivia that Chris puts together. He does his best to be able to embarrass me each week with Greg doesn't know. So we'll go through here, see what he can come up with. I'll guess first, and you can play along with me and see if we can get this right here. The first question: which franchise has the third highest all-time winning percentage? Oh, God. Okay. So, all right. So it's sneaky. Ravens stands out because they had to forfeit all history as the Browns. So their record only counts what's taken place since 96. So they're sneaky up there, but they're also so far up there that they might be higher than third. So that's sneaky. Obviously, the Steelers have been perennially great. The Bears had a huge head start. I have to feel like they wore away at some of that. And then the Patriots also dug a real big hole early, but then were so ridiculous for 20 years. Okay. All right. So tough one here. We got a hint. They have won 56.1% of their games all time. All right. I've got my answer. Do you have a guess?
Yeah, I got a guess. Well, who do you think are 1 and 2? Do you have any idea what that is? Because I think I know who 1 and 2 are.
So I'm gonna go that winning percentage wise, I think the Ravens were a tell. I think the Ravens are higher. I think it's like Ravens, Steelers, Patriots. I think it's like Ravens, Steelers, Patriots, then Bears. So BDAC. So I'm gonna go Patriots as my answer.
I'm going to go Steelers just because I think I remember a graphic in my head where it was like Cowboys, 49ers, Steelers as a 3 top of all time, but I guess we'll see.
All right, let's see.
Oh,
Ravens. So the Ravens were third,
Dallas,
the Patriots fourth, Dallas and Green Bay. There we go. All right, very good, very good. So the Ravens were sneaky, and I think it is because of their they haven't getting to reset the deck there and not having that nasty stretch some of the other teams. You know, like the Steelers in the 80s weren't very good, but then they bounced right back. All right. Of this group, which quarterback has the most playoff wins? Oh. So format comes into play that I'm pretty sure it's not Staubach because there's more rounds now. Steve Young had to wait a while. Troy Aikman had a condensed career because of the things at the end. It's weird that Mahomes is already included. I hate that. The answer is tied for third all time. Brady at 30. The fact that it's 35 and then down to 16 is disgusting.
16.
It's gross. All right. So my gut tells me it's Aikman, but it's weird that he included Mahomes on there. That Mahomes could already be.
I think Mahomes has like 12 or 13
in 5 years. It's right there at that range. So Aikman also had several buys in there. It really might be Mahomes, but I'm going to go with Aikman. What's your guess?
I'm between Mahomes and Aikman. I'm going to go Mahomes.
Steve Young, sneaky Steve Young. That is really interesting that the fact that Montana and Steve Young were second and third, even though like Montana blocked the first like half of Steve Young's career.
And Staubach with 13.
That's awesome.
Jeez.
That's awesome. That was such a sustained run there. All right. So unfortunately, normally I get to play like my fun video but I don't get to now.
I want winners.
Can't do it. I have a really fun Pete Weber video when it's just me. All right, so we'll take that down here, and now we are very excited to announce we have a new sponsorship that we are going to be starting this year, working with Underdog. We will be going through and sharing all kinds of fun stuff there. I went and built a lineup for our new higher and lower contests that they do. So you can do best ball drafts to be able to pick out your favorites, but Underdog Fantasy can get you kind of warmed up for the season. We're going to be doing some best ball drafts to get you ready. I know I hate it when I go in and log on to some of the other websites and you'd make your first pick and somebody else drafts Andrew Luck and then logs off, and you don't get any reality to get prepped for your fantasy season. So you can go in and get ready. And then during the season, right now I have up on screen some of the season long higher and lower contests that you can do for their pick'em. So I picked out, they had both James Cook and Damian Harris here. So they have James Cook rushing over for the season at 600.5 yards and Damian Harris at 550.5. So Hans, the reason I asked you to wait is I thought that was interesting. So they're basically pegging it as a 1A, 1B. And right now I have it that I have James Cook going over that and Damian Harris going under that. Obviously, I added Stephon Diggs over 1,200 yards because he's a beast. But I also thought they have Ramondre Stevenson at only 925. I think he's a pretty good running back, and they don't have anybody else right now. But so I put on 4 picks. If I get 4 right, I win 10-1 on my odds. So if I bet $25 or if I wager $25 here if for their contest to pick my lineup, I get $250 back for my lineup for them. What is your thought on the odds that they put in for James Cook and Damian Harris?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on Cook being the RB1 and Harris. I think we could see a little bit of the Singletary James Cook kind of run here, but Cook seems to be more where they're going. Like Harris is on a 1-year deal. I don't know. I'd side Cook. I think Harris and Latavius Murray are going to take carries from each other, so I don't see Harris hitting that number, and I see Cook going well over 600 yards.
Yeah, I felt the same. Maybe it'll be interesting there. I think it could be a little more 3-headed than people think, but I was very intrigued that, from a statistical standpoint, they were setting their odds at this being a 1A, 1B backfield, and that, Cook just barely edging out Harris. So that's really interesting to see that from an outside perspective. That intrigued me. But when I build my lineup here with Underdog, I'm going to be doing a season long for James Cook going over and Damian Harris going under. This is something we'll be able to do all season long as we talk about matchups coming up for the next game. We'll be able to talk, and if we see, one team has their, cornerback is injured, that might be something we lean into more with an over for not only Stephon Diggs, but maybe Dalton Kincaid or maybe Gabe Davis. And we can see when we see a team going in that has a heavy, run defense strength, maybe we'll lean more in the pass against the run. But this will be a fun way we can make matchups and lineups all week long. All season long. We're also able to go in and do the best ball contest. We may actually be doing one of those coming up with some of the staff from Cover One. That's going to be a lot of fun to build it out. So make sure you're checking it out. If you sign up with Underdog with our promo code Cover One or with the link that we have in the show description, you will get your first deposit matched up to $100. You get a free $100 to play with your first deposit based on using promo code Cover One or using the link we have below. So make sure you check it out. We appreciate Underdog sponsoring us for this year and looking forward to a fun season along the way. So before we wrap up here, Hans, I was going to ask any final thoughts on the red and blue scrimmage today.
I mean, everything I heard, I mean, I love the blue helmets, but we won't go down that path because people are going to just scream at me all night long. Dalton Kincaid dropped a football, so he's human. I think that's maybe my biggest takeaway. No, in reality, Taylor Rapp playing linebacker is something that really interests me because I think I kind of tweeted this out. The Bills kind of led the nickel renaissance. Are we seeing the dime revolution in Buffalo? Like, is that where we're going? Is there no middle linebacker? Terrell Dodson, Balin Spector, Terrell Bernard gone. Taylor Rapp, is he going to be on the field way more than we thought?
So that is super interesting. I'm curious to see it. And it's something that I think that maybe it's going to be similar to our thoughts on the 12 personnel coming in, where initially we're so conditioned to it being 70, 80, 85% 11 and only like 4% 12. And that, hey, maybe we'll go from 4 all the way up to 20 or 25. And that would seem like a huge jump. And we've been kind of tempering everyone's expectations. Then we all go to camp and watch, be like, more than half our plays for 12 personnel. We're out there all the time. I've now kind of reevaluated my expectations for that as well and have bumped it up quite a bit, that I think we might run 12 personnel a lot during the season. And I've gone the same way where, hey, you can look at some statistical websites that tracked coverages last year, and they'll tell you we ran 0 dime snaps all season. I do think it depends on what you call Saran Neal. There were definitely some snaps against the Chiefs where Taron Johnson and Saran Neal were on the field, but we'll see how you describe that. But the idea, one, I know a couple sites were out there calling Taylor Rapp a linebacker. He was out there as a safety. They were just running dime. So when they're running dime and it's Matt Milano with Taron Johnson on one side and Taylor Rapp on the other, that's dime defense. It's just having a third safety, and instead of a second nickel corner, you have a bigger guy in Taylor Rapp there. So whether you want to call that a nickel linebacker or a dime third safety or a dime linebacker or whatever you want to call it, having that out there is really intriguing. And it gives us the idea that, I was talking to Yards Per Pass on Twitter the other day about, could you have kind of a platoon setup where when it's obvious rundowns, short yardage, goal line, play Terrell Dotson, put him out on the field, let him be a downhill thumper. When it's some of the, first, second down, normal down and distance, I'm good with Terrell Bernard. Let him be out there. And every third down or every longer distance, bring in Taylor Rapp. Like, can we just set it up that way to have this rotation of going that route? I think it's really interesting. And it also would bring into play if we see, how about this? Let's flip it around the other way. I'll ask you this way. We know we are going to see some dime snaps this year, right? That is an absolute given. Taylor Rapp is going to be on the field with Taron Johnson for some amount of plays, whether it's 2% or 48%, we don't know, but he's going to be on the field. Who calls the plays and who wears the green dot in those plays? Let's say we're not ready to go crazy, and let's say it's 10% of the plays, and Taylor Rapp is only on the field with Taron Johnson 10% of the plays. In an NFL game, that's still a healthy amount. Who calls the defense in those 10 plays?
I think it's Micah Hyde. I keep going back to Micah. Matt Milano, I love Matt Milano. I lead the Matt Milano fan club, but he seems so quiet, and I just don't know if he's like, is he that guy that's in the huddle, like he's a low talker like from Seinfeld, or can he actually like scream? And like we see him pointing over and moving people around. I'm not saying he can't lead a defense, but he just seems too quiet to be that guy. I could see Micah Hyde with the green dot. He'll be on the field 100% of the plays. He's never leaving unless he gets hurt. Put the dot on his helmet. He can do it. Other than that, you can't put it on the middle linebacker if Taylor Rapp's on the field. You can't do that. So I don't know.
I'm even curious, like from the logistics of NFL rules. Like I want to go back and ask, like when in the game where Tremaine Edmonds got hurt last year, what did they do the rest of the game? Like I'm genuinely curious. Like, does the NFL give you the option to swap that with another player when that guy goes out injured? Do you now get to like turn someone else's microphone on? Or I'm really curious about the logistics of that, of what happens in game, or if you have a team that's rotating players, what you're allowed to do.
I thought I remembered something where they're like Dodson could have, like he had the dot now. I'm not 100% positive on that, but yeah, to your point, maybe it is like, let's say Dodson's playing 75% of the time and Rapp's playing 25. Is it legal for both of them to have the dot and you just move them in and out?
Or so Eric and I talked about this while we were in the car at training camp, and he wondered if it's that proportion. Does Taylor Rapp like come into the field like junior high plays where he's like, you tell him to play on the sideline, and he runs in and like tells everybody when he gets on the field? So I'm really curious. I'm going to try to research and find out what rules are out there from like an actual like NFL rule standpoint, because there is a limit on who you're allowed to have the communication turned on in the helmet to. And I'm wondering, is it that you can only have one? I think it's something along the lines of you can only have one at a time. It's not that you can only have one for the whole game. It's that you can't have multiple at the same time. And that maybe you could then turn one off. Maybe it's like a soccer thing where it's once you're substituted out, you can't go back in. So maybe if you turn someone off, it's intended for injury purposes only, and that you can't like flip one off and then flip the other one on and go back and forth. But I'm really curious, and I'm going to try to do some research to find out where that goes.
This is what it's like to be a 2023 Bills fan, right? Our biggest concern
Yeah.
right now is who's going to wear the green
Who
dot.
gets to wear the green dot? It's so fun. It's so fun. All right, man. So thank you. Appreciate you coming on here tonight. It was a lot of fun. Let the folks know what else. What other things you have coming up? I know you're working on a fun big project.
Yeah, I mean, find me on Twitter at Uber Hansen. But as far as projects go, I got 2 going on right now that'll come out as written pieces for Cover One. One is a practice squad research piece where we're going to cover what the Bills have done with their practice squad the past 3 years and expectations in the upcoming year. I'm doing that with Chris Janke on Twitter, who's done an incredible amount of research. I've learned so much from him just in doing this project. And the other thing I'm going to do is scouting of all 4 teams in the AFC East. Did it last year. They come with projected standings. Last year, every single projected standing was within 1 win. Hopefully I could do that again this year, but it'll be in-depth pieces on the Patriots, then the Dolphins, then the Jets, then the Bills, posted every single week starting next Wednesday.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Thank you guys for listening along. Big shout out to producer Chris Seth. Appreciate him very, very much. But on behalf of everybody here at Cover One, for Ashley and Antwan for joining, for Hans here along with me, you have been listening to the Greg Tompsett Sports Show, and we are out.